Well, you all really seem to enjoy my vSeeBox Android TV box reviews. Well, guess what? The folks over at vSeeBox have sent over not one, but two new boxes. First, we have the V6 Plus, followed by the VC Max. Both of these were included in a single box. Now, we're not going to take a look at both of these today. Today, we're going to take a look at the V6 Plus because it makes sense that the Plus would be less than the Max. Well, maybe that's the case, and we're going to find out in the next two videos. First of all, let's move this one aside, and let's bring the V6 Plus into review. Let's unbox it, connect it, and see what we have. Oh, and by the way, I've heard you all. These hands are getting a little annoying for some of you, so I'm going to do my best to hold them down and not let them get out of control. Yeah, I'll try not to do that again. Let's get started with our look at the vSeeBox V6 Plus. First, by taking a look at the box, you'll notice we have 4 gigabytes of RAM, 64 gigabytes of ROM, which seems standard for a Plus model. It does say it supports 8K Ultra HD. Again, my apologies. I don't have an 8K television in order to test that capability. And honestly, there's not a lot of 8K content out there. But by the way, if you're out there and you want me to test an 8K TV, just let me know. You know where all the links are down below. It does have a remote, and that remote, my understanding is different from the previous model. So we'll take a look at that. Over here on the side, again, highlighting the 8K capability, 4 gigabytes of RAM, 64 gigabytes of ROM, the voice control features, and it does support H.265 HEVC, which is nice for highly compressed but highly watchable video. Over here on the other side, we have a couple of other interesting items to point out. We do have dual band Wi-Fi 6, Bluetooth 5.0. Here's the biggie. This one now includes Android 14 TV. So it's Android TV 14. Previous models were Android 12. So we should get a little bit of an upgrade to the interface. It'd be interesting to see how the interface is different. We do have HDMI 2.1, and of course we have over-the-air updates. If you're looking at purchasing this for hardware only, you're probably going to be underwhelmed. However, I will say this, these boxes perform and are much faster than a Google TV, and that hardware and user experience is on par with something like an NVIDIA Shield. All right, let's open it up and see what we have inside. This is kind of nice. We have a little pull tab here. We can just pull that open. Very, very professional vSeeBox. Inside, we have the vSeeBox V6 Plus unit. We'll take a look at that in a minute. Pull out the inner tray here, which is a little there. We got another little piece of cardboard. And inside, we get our power unit, which I will need to label that. Let's see, is this a standard power? Is this pretty similar to what we've had before? This is a 5 volts, 2 amps. Yep, that's pretty standard. We also get yet another HDMI cable. Man, I have a ton of HDMI cables. And we get a remote. Now, interestingly, this remote is different from the remotes from the previous units. Let me show you that. So here's the remote from the V5 Pro and the Elite Ultra. They use the same remote. I assume that they're probably going to use the same remote in these two newer products as well. But as you can see, a little bit of a difference in shape. The controls are very similar, but a little bit of a user experience change. You can see up here we do have an OK button we have for the TV, so we can get through the TV menus. Looks like we can control our TV menus now. Can't swear by that, but it does look like they have that OK button for that. And then you'll see also along the top, it's more rounded on this newer remote. It looks a little sleeker. This looks a little boxy. I do like it. You've got the same kind of buttons down below here for your applications. You also have your color selector buttons. You can see those are a little bit different here. Overall, I do like this remote better. It feels better in the hands. It looks better. It looks a little bit more modern, a little more sleek. So it looks like you're paying for a little bit of an upgraded remote with these two new boxes from vSeeBox. All right, back to the V6 Plus. Let's take a look at it. Oh, wait, before we do that, we do have an instruction manual. We always like to take a look at our instruction manual. It is in English. So here's our connection diagram if you think you need that. These things are, as you all know, are so easy to hook up. HDMI, power, plug them in, and they're ready to go. So it's nice that they include these. Most folks aren't going to need to use these instructions. It does give us a little tip on how to use the Start Wizard program and how to select your network and connect. Very important. Looks like the interface, according to this little screenshot, is not much different than the old interface, even though it has been upgraded to Android 14. We'll take a look at that. All right, there you go. There's the instructions. Let's get this box out of the way. We're going to need our power, and let's take a look at the actual unit itself. Here we go. This is the vSeeBox V6 Plus, a little bigger box than the V5 Pro, but similar in size to the Elite Ultra, which is interesting right there. Why is this one more the size of the Elite Ultra and not more like the V5 Plus? So the design language does not carry from unit to unit for sure. You could put all these in a line and never know that these were all from the same company. Let's go ahead and remove this plastic. Oh, there we go. Shiny. It's got a little bit, you can see that, a little bit of a purple color, which is their color. Looks like they've added that to, maybe they're upgrading and trying to decide on a design language. I guess we'll take a look at that when we see the vSeeBox V6 Max. All right, let's take a look on the front here. We have V6 Plus 8K Ultra High Definition. Looks like we have a light here. We'll probably have a display here with time. Over here on the back, I'm going to cover up my MAC address here. You can see some information on the back. Model V6 Plus right there. Okay, along the back, we have two USB ports, as we do with the previous units. We have one that looks like it's a OG USB. We have a USB 3.0. We do have an SPDIF for audio. If you want optical audio, you can get that. Here's our HDMI. We have a slot here for an SD card where you can add an SD card to add more memory. So if you want to add your own content to the device and stream that, you can do that. We have Ethernet, we have a reset, and then of course we have our DC in, which this will plug in right there, like that. Along the sides, clean and clean, which is a little different than the other units. They had, one of the units had the SD card on the side. So everything is on the back now. That's pretty nice. You don't have any confusion about where things are on the side. So your features for the user interface are either on the front or on the back. All right, there's the hardware. Taking it out of the box, let's go ahead and plug it in for the first time. Plug this into the barrel jack connector right here. While we're on the back, we'll go ahead and plug in our network. I will be using an Ethernet connection, and then we'll plug in our HDMI. We'll set that here. And over here, we will plug in our power. As you can see by the ribbon strip, we are pushing a 1080p signal, and that's just because of the type of capture card I'm using. All right, we see the standard vSeeBox opening here. At this point, it's ready to connect the remote, but I do want to do a couple of highlights here. One of the things we'll notice that's different from the vSeeBox Elite Ultra and the V5 Pro is there's no clock. I kind of missed the little display. I thought there might be a little display right here. That is missing. That is a cost reduction, I'm sure, but it is something that I would like to have seen. All right, let's grab our remote. We need some batteries. Now, interestingly, these have all been AAAs. For this remote, for the VC6 Plus, it is looking for AA's. All right, we'll be using the Amazon Basics. I do love Amazon Basic batteries. Link down in the video description below, as well as links to everything else that I'm talking about besides the vSeeBoxes. Let's get these batteries in. There we go. Now we can go back to pairing this remote with the vSeeBox. And it says press and hold OK and volume minus at the same time. So here is OK and here is minus. We'll hold those together. We do get a little blue light right there. And you see connecting to Bluetooth vSeeBox. Now you can release the buttons. Remote control connected successfully. There we go. Let's see if it's working. And it is. Okay, let's go ahead and start working through our menus. We'll choose English for United States. I do like that we have the opportunity to scale the screen to fit. I have had to use that on my previous boxes. That's nice. It looks fine right now. We'll go ahead and go next. Time zone, we'll use auto. We'll let it go out there and grab the time for us. Remote is smooth. It's a decent remote. It's as good as any other remote I've used. All right, app installation. So that's different. That's new. This gives you a status indicator letting you know that it is now installing these various apps. We do have something up there called heat weather. That's interesting as well. Let's go ahead and let this finish up. All right, there we go. There is the main interface. It looks very familiar to what we're used to. You can see along the top, we have some basic apps. We have YouTube. We have our weather. Let's take a look at that weather. Let's see what happens when we hit weather. So it obviously is not in my location, but kind of a nice little addition to the list of apps at the top. We'll go ahead and hit back to go back out of there. I have something now called a smart upgrade. That probably before would have been called over the air. Let's see if their over the air is down here. It is not. It used to be down here. So they have changed the interface quite a bit. Let's see what smart upgrade does for us. So those are those same apps. It'll let you check to see whether there are updates to the apps that they have pre-installed. Interestingly, there's Firefox, Downloaders, SmartTube. Again, we have access to the Google Play Store. You would need to choose whether you want to go in here and sign in and download your particular apps. I typically do not with these devices. I just use the standard stock apps that come with the vSeeBox and give that a shot. So to show you what that looks like, here's YouTube. Now YouTube, when I load that up, it is going to ask me if I want to get started and sign in. So again, that is the official YouTube app. And this would be a good time to try out that voice remote, which they've changed here to the little Google Assistant button right here. Retrocombs Tech. There you go, there's my channel. All right, as a reminder, one of the things I always like to do is put a VPN on here. I use Surfshark. If you're interested in Surfshark, and it seems to work well for my use, I will have a link down in the video description below where you can get Surfshark at a really reasonable rate. All right, let's continue to take a look across the top. We do have YouTube Music, we have Netflix. Here's our remote setup. Interesting that they have a separate app for the remote setup because the remote is set up. Here's a file browser. Let's take a look at the file browser. This is an upgrade from the previous file browser. You can see over here we have all video, music. And we have APKs here, which is nice. So it'll localize all those so that you can find those. So here's a couple of APKs that were probably downloaded recently to install a couple of those apps. So recently I had a question about installing an SD card into these devices and why you would want to do that. Well, here is why, because you could install some video right here and you could play video from that SD card or potentially set up a streaming server from here. I'm not sure if Plex works on here. I'm gonna have to try that sometime. If you're interested for me to find out whether the Plex server will run on this device, put that down below. But you can run your own audio, music files, video files, and display pictures using this file browser. You see, we still continue to have access to Google Play games, movies, and TV. We have access to Chrome. Let's fire up Chrome. Let's check for an update. Looks like I have to sign in to get that update. I will not do that for this video. We'll just go ahead and use without an account. Okay, so this is the situation where that air mouse would come into play, and I don't know if these new remotes support air mouse, which was a button you could press, and then that would actually give you a cursor on your screen that you could move around. Oh wait, here we go. This might be it right here. Let's press that. All right, let's go ahead and try that. And then now we can come down here and we can select use without an account. There we go. So it does include the air mouse. I do like that. Now it's not an air mouse. You have to move it around with these. It's not moving as you move the remote. There's no gyroscope in here. So you are manually moving it with the controls, but that's still better than nothing. So got it. And there we go. So now you can see we have Chrome running. So if you want to browse the web and get to some other websites, you can do that on your V6 Plus, which is something that the Chromecast with Google TVs do not have. Looks like we have a Lean Key Keyboard Pro in here. I'm not sure if we're using the Google keyboard, Gboard. We should be able to. By the way, speaking of keyboards, most of these can use one of those USB devices to plug in a thumb keyboard if you want one of those, or a regular keyboard. I will have a link down below for one of those that I've shared in previous videos for you. Here's our device preferences. Here's our about. Let's take a look at the about. You can see right here. There you go. There's the device name. It is hard locked to V6 Plus. We can do a factory reset if you'd like to gift this to somebody after you've already logged in. Here's your status on your network, serial numbers, and other information. Here's your firmware version. Here is our Android TV OS version, again, 14. We've been patched up to the March 5th, 2025. Now, that is nice because Android 14 is still getting those upgrades. 12 ended in, I believe, 2023 or early 2024. So we are getting security patches if vSeeBox is pushing those. You can see our kernel version and our Android OS build. We have our date, time, language, keyboard, display, and sound. Google Assistant, if you'd like to turn that on. We can give it our location access, usage, and data. We can give it usage and diagnostics information. I did have a viewer ask if accessibility was available. It really wasn't on the previous boxes. There were options, but it wasn't live. Let's see if TalkBack is live on this one. Looks like we can enable TalkBack. Very nice. That was not available in previous versions. So if you're looking for accessibility with these devices, I highly recommend the newer versions. And of course, you can come in here and you can configure that. Again, these are all using those Android 14 features. Very nice. So we'll go back here. Here's text to speech if we'd like to turn that on. Text scaling, bold text, we can do that. There you go. So the accessibility is much better on these devices than they were on the previous devices. Look at that. We have switch access. We have audio descriptions. Again, if you are looking for accessibility features, choose the new V6 models. Don't choose the V3, V5. Those were not functional. We have some extra settings. Let's take a quick look at that. Here is our system update. Let's go ahead and see if there is a system update. It says your system firmware is up to date. It'd be interesting to see if we get updates or if that is locked into place. Here's HDMI CEC. That was not available before. This will allow you to automatically power up your devices just by hitting your remote. That's nice. That's a feature of 14 that will be appreciated by many. Enable non-TV version app. I am not sure what that is. If you know, please put that down in the comments below. Allow remote configuration. We've talked about that. Here's an NTP server. You can see where that's linking to. You can auto start applications with 14. You couldn't do that before. So that's nice. If you just want something like weather to automatically start as soon as you boot, we can put that on, and now that will start as soon as we boot up. Here's our application lock. We can change our password and system. Again, with Android 14, we're just getting a lot of great user experience upgrades to the box. All right, let's see what else we have. We have launcher settings down here. We can add groups, parental settings. That is awesome. We can set a code and set that up so we can keep everything friendly for the chillins in the house. That's a good thing to do. Here's our startup app again, and then of course we can reset the launcher back to the defaults. Here is our upgrade. Let's go ahead and hit this. It says, and we've already done this, your system firmware is up to date. So occasionally hit that because you may get security patches. Here's our hotkeys. If we want to set our hotkeys for specific things, that is an option. Our network, here's our initial setup. If you need that initial setup screen, you can hit that right here and go back to the beginning. You can see that. Let's get back out of here. I do not want to go through that again. Here's our system info. We've seen that before in our system settings. It's just a quick access to that. Here's our power. If we hit that, that will allow us to power off, restart, or go directly to our settings. You can also do that by holding the power button here. You see that same menu. And then finally, you have something called memory cleanup. This has been available on all vSeeBoxes. You hit that and it'll just clean up your memory, close out those apps you may have loaded. Great to use with low memory systems. Now we do have 4 gigabytes of RAM. It would really be nice if vSeeBox would up that to 8 gigabytes. 4 gigabytes does not seem to harm the performance of these devices though. But again, as these go forward, 8 gigabytes, come on vSeeBox, let's get that thing in there. And you know, as much as we are paying for this hardware, I feel like they could afford to throw an extra 4 gigs in here just to make the experience potentially better. Again, I say that, but I also say, man, this thing is pretty fast. There's no lag on this thing. All right, and just a couple more things here for this particular device. We have a Firefox browser that we can download if we want to use that instead of the Chrome browser. So some people like a little more security, Firefox. For some people, they'll say that that provides that. I think the fact that we can use Chrome without logging in probably does the same thing at this point. Now, one of the things you'll notice on this particular device, if we were to compare the V6 Plus to the V5 Pro, the V5 Pro would have another app store that would allow you to download some additional apps that are not found in the Play Store. So this is a really plug and play kind of experience for vSeeBox. All right, so what do I think about the V6 Plus? Well, it is in some ways a downgrade in hardware from the V5 Pro, and in some ways it's an upgrade because it does give you a little better user experience with Android 14.0 and kind of locks down the apps that you have access to make this a friendlier box for new users to these types of boxes. At this point, I think the vSeeBox V5 Elite Ultra is a much more powerful machine, but honestly, you don't really need them. And again, I do miss the little clock. I think, again, they're saving costs, passing that cost savings to themselves, not to us. And then we're paying for this hardware. So what do I think about it versus the V6 Max? Well, that is the story for the next video. I hope you will come back and watch the next video on the V6 Max. Be sure to go down below, hit like, subscribe, all the things the kids do, hit those alerts. So when I release that, you will get part 2 of kind of this series. Which is better, the V6 Plus or the V6 Max? We're going to take a look at that in the next video. And by the way, if you like these devices, check out this playlist here where I have other Android streaming boxes and videos that you can check out. Thanks for watching this video on the vSeeBox V6 Plus. Retrocombs out.